Good morning. You know, the day that we live in right now is a little uncertain, and that can make things a little bit hard on a regular basis, especially when you can't work, you're at home, you're making the attempt to transition to cyber schooling your kids for the first time maybe ever. Childcare is gone, and even going out and doing things with your family and your friends is frowned upon right now. And there's good reasons for this, but it leaves us wondering, what do we make of this whole thing? And I have a thought for you this morning. You know, in the very beginning, God created the heavens and the earth. I think God was the most creative individual. He planned and shaped everything. He created this plant different from that plant. He created this animal different from that one. He put water where he wanted it. He put the sky where he wanted it. Eventually he made a garden, and in the garden he placed everything in the proper place. It's there that he creates mankind. From the dust of the ground, he breathes his spirit into mankind. From man he makes woman. When all this is done, and God looks back on it and says it is good, Genesis 2, verse 1 and 2 says this: "Thus the heavens and the earth were completed in all their vast array. By the seventh day God had finished the work he had been doing. So on the seventh day he rested from all his work. Then God blessed the seventh day and made it holy, because on it he rested from all the work of creating that he had done." God, after creating the heavens and the earth, rests because he needs it. And he doesn't need it in such a way that you and I need a rest when we work really hard. God doesn't need those sort of things. God needs to set an example for you and I, that we also need time to rest. I've said this before, but in our society today, we place so much emphasis on what we can produce, and what we can produce determines our value. But I don't see that as the example that God gives us. God works very hard. He creates many things. He stands back and he says, "This is good, this is good, this is good." He creates mankind. He says, "This is very good." And then he rests. And like it or not, the society that we live in is very, very focused on our production. So much so that it is time for us to take a rest. We are human beings, but we live and we act like human doings. We pack our schedules, we pack our family schedules, we move from one thing to the next, constantly on the go. Rarely do we take time to rest, truly rest. Even when we plan vacations, which is supposed to be the rest that is built into our jobs, we pack those schedules out and we do the entire time we're meant to be resting. One of the things that we have to remember is that we are human beings. Now, the earliest Christians and Jews would have regarded Sunday as the start of the week. You and I tend to think of Sunday as the end of the week. Monday is the first day, we have the weekend, Sunday wraps up the weekend, and Monday is the first day of the week again. But in history, the first day of the week was Sunday. So I want you to consider something, that God took the seventh day, he took the Sabbath day, he determined it would be holy. He said, "This is the day of rest." And though that would have been Saturday in history, we think of the Sabbath day as Sunday. And the day is not important. It's the Sabbath that is important. If Sunday is the start of the week, then the Sabbath, the rest, is what prepares us for what's coming. There's this story in Mark chapter 4. It's called Jesus Calms the Storm. I'd like to read it to you. That day when evening came, Jesus said to his disciples, "Let us go over to the other side." Leaving the crowd behind, they took him along just as he was, in the boat. There were also other boats with them. A furious squall came up, and the waves broke over the boat so that it was nearly swamped. Jesus was in the stern, sleeping on a cushion. The disciples woke him and said to him, "Teacher, don't you care if we drown?" He got up, rebuked the wind, and said to the waves, "Quiet, be still." Then the wind died down and it was completely calm. He said to his disciples, "Why are you so afraid? Do you still have no faith?" They were terrified and asked each other, "Who is this? Even the wind and the waves obey him." So Jesus gets on a boat, on a calm lake. He goes to the back of the boat and he falls asleep. In the middle of this boat ride, there's a furious wind, a squall, a sudden storm that whips up, and it begins to terrify these sailors, these disciples, these fishermen who spent their life fishing, who spent their life on a boat. And yet this storm terrifies them. And Jesus seems to be able to sleep through the storm. He's resting. He's resting. Just like Sunday is a day of rest for us and prepares us for the week ahead. As Jesus rests here on this boat, the disciples come and grab him, and the rest prepares him to stand up and calm the storm. Each of us has a gas tank, and I fear that many times in our world, in our lives, because of the pressures of society, because of our schedules, because of the way that we complicate the world, we run on very little gas in the tank. We don't take time to fill it up. We take time to use it, go, and we never stop. The day of rest, it's a call to stop. It's a call to pause. It's a call to rest and to re-find ourselves in the Lord, to put a little gas in the tank. And don't you think that maybe for a society that is go all the time, one of the hard but beautiful truths of the time that we're in is that finally we could not make ourselves rest, that we are forced into a rest? And I don't mean that you sit around or you don't get out of bed. I mean that suddenly our priorities are shifted, they're refocused. Suddenly we're not able to jump in our car and put on our suit and go to work every day. We don't come home and get in front of our computer and finish up that file that we couldn't finish up at the office. Suddenly we are focused on teaching our children and homeschooling them. Suddenly we're walking on the local rail trail with our family to get some exercise. Maybe for the first time in years, like me, you sat down and had breakfast with your family as a family. When I was a summer camp counselor, there was a Bible study that we would teach sometimes. And one of the things that we talked about in this Bible study is we would take our kids out into the woods and we'd build a fire with them. And we'd get the fire roaring hot until you had some coals in the fire. And one of the things that we would do is from the fire, we would take a coal and we would move it away from the fire. And as we watched, the coal would grow cool, it would stop glowing, it would look like it's covered in ash. And you could actually pick it up in your hand. It wouldn't burn you. It'd been away from the fire too long. But if you took that same coal and you placed it back into the fire carefully, it began to glow red hot again. It began to give off the same kind of heat that the other coals did, and suddenly the fire grew into a cooking fire, something with purpose, something that you could do on hot coals. This time of rest that we're forced into is preparing us for something. And you can choose during this time of rest, this time of break, this time of reprioritization, you could choose to be locked in fear. You could choose to still be beholden to the schedule that you set for yourself and be locked into go, go, go. You could choose to still be a human doing, but you could also choose this time to say, look, the coal has been in my hand long enough. It is time now to reintroduce the coal to the fire. I'm ready to glow again. I'm ready for gas to be in my tank. I'm ready to take that nap so that I can be prepared to calm the storm that's coming. I'm ready to start my week with rest rather than go, go, go. I know that it's not always easy to find the blessing in the midst of something that feels terrible. And certainly, we have a fair amount of praying that we need to do for our first responders, for our medical staff, people who are protecting us right now. And the world will change because of everything that's going on. Make no doubt about that. But you and I, as followers of Jesus, as people that know the one true God, in this time, we can make it about rest. We can make it about pausing. We can make it about putting some new things in our daily schedule that fill up our tank, that reunite us with God, that make that coal begin to glow once again. So my prayer for you today, my challenge for you today, especially as we go into Holy Week next week, and we begin to look at the journey of Jesus to the cross, consider taking the time that you have, that you've been given, to find rest in the Lord. Have a great day.